Oh, oh, oh. Om Sai Ishwaraya Vidmahi Satyadevaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat. Om Sai Ishwaraya Vidmahi Satyadevaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat. Om Sai Ishwaraya Vidmahe Satyadevaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Continuing chapter 14, Al Drucker. Al Drucker was an aerospace engineer in the Missile Center of the US Department of Defense. He was also consultant to the US Air Force and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, that is NASA. Some years ago, Al Drucker and a friend boarded a small plane and went on a pleasure cruise near the green Sierra Nevada mountains. They had no particular program but wanted merely to relax and enjoy the nature's bounteous beauty in all its splendor. In about 45 minutes, they traveled about 150 miles. They were cruising along, watching the beautiful scenes unfolding gradually. Suddenly, terror struck them in their face. A powerful storm was rapidly approaching. Thick, dark clouds lay directly in their way. Lightning and thunder threatened their safety. Aldrich immediately tried to turn his plane back, but found to his shock dark clouds massed all around like a wall. The small aircraft was caught in a hopeless situation. Aldrich struggled to keep the plane steady and under control against the violent forces of the unfavorable weather. His unequal fight went on for 2 hours. The terrain over which they were flying was mountainous with some peaks as high as 12,000 feet. Compelled to maintain its height, Aldrich was desperately fighting to force the engine to push the plane above the clouds. But the wind and the thick clouds were pushing forcefully the plane down. Aldrich's anxiety increased. As for his companion, he had already passed out for lack of oxygen and was lying limp in his seat. Aldrich lost hope. In desperation, he began to shout for help, Mayday, Mayday, into his radio transmitter. He had still a flicker of hope that his agonized cry might reach some ground controller and bring succor, even if by some obscure chance somebody on the ground did indeed receive his distress call. Who would dare to venture out and fly in the face of such cruel weather to help them? There was no response on the radio receiver. Aldrich realized that he had lost all contact with the ground staff. He was not also sure whether his friend in other seat was still alive. There was no reaction from him at all to his loud cries. He showed no signs of breathing even. Caught in desperate struggle against nature's irresistible forces, the unfortunate man was rapidly losing his strength as well as the will to fight. To his utter shock, he noticed that he was about to run out of fuel. The tiny aircraft was unable to withstand the fury of the weather. Soon enough, there were sounds indicating that some parts of the plane might have broken off. Aldrich felt that his end had neared. Finding himself in a desperate situation, he reached out, to God. Oh God, he cried, save me. I can no longer struggle. I have no strength left. Come fast and rescue me. I do not want to die. I totally surrender to you. I am in your hands. Do with me as you please. Having surrendered himself so totally to God's will, Aldrich did not really expect that he would survive the crisis. As oxygen supply gradually depleted, he knew that he was reaching his end. At that crucial moment, suddenly the wireless receiver sprang to life. Loud and clear, the words began coming in. A voice was heard to the distressed plane caught in storm. Are you able to hear me? It was now nearly 1 hour before, 1 hour after Aldrich had cried out for help into his wireless transmitter. The voice he now heard was confident and firm and reassuring. Tears flooded Aldrich's eyes. An angel had come to his rescue. As he groped for the microphone hanging down, grabbed it, and was about to press the switch, the voice spoke again. If you are hearing me, it said, turn the plane 60 degrees to right and thereafter turn to left. I will then be able to recognize you. Don't panic. I will safely bring you down. Aldrich followed the instructions. He was, however, not in a position to talk into the transmitter. He then heard on the receiver, I am now seeing you. You need not answer me. You are at the moment 75 miles from Reno Aerodrome. Calm yourself. Don't panic. If safety was within 75 miles, he could reach it in 30 minutes provided weather was favorable. But the fuel indicator showed that he had fuel sufficient for barely 10 minutes. He was in no position to talk back or argue. He was merely doing whatever that invisible voice was telling him to do. Despite the inimical weather and insecure situation, the voice on the wireless receiver was coming through calm and self assured, infusing him with strength and self confidence. At every step, it was instructing him how to control the craft. Finally, the last words were heard through this receiver. If you proceed straight in the same direction, you will be out of the cloud cover. You will then see the Reno Aerodrome. Begin your descent. I will now take leave of you. Goodbye, good luck, that's all. The Good Samaritan did not reveal his identity. Exactly 12 minutes later, Aldrich cleared the clouds and sighted the Reno aerodrome bathed in snow. He asked for permission to land. A few moments before touchdown, the companion in the adjoining seat opened his eyes and sat up. As soon as the plane came to a stop, a jeep drove up to receive them. The two friends got into it and were taken to the air traffic controller. In great surprise, the official asked them, how did you arrive at this late hour? What has happened? Our radar have no indication of any approaching aircraft. Until a few minutes ago, this aerodrome was in utter chaos. How did you reach here alive? How could you manage to land? It is unbelievable that you could land safely. The authorities advised Aldrich to fly south towards Mexico as a severe snowstorm was gathering strength just then. He got his plane service quickly, replenished the fuel tank, and traveled by the same plane to reach the borders of Mexico. The two friends searched for some shelter. To their immense relief, they discovered that they were in Indira Devi's ashram. The whole place was brightly lit up. When they called out, nobody answered. So they opened the outer gate and cautiously made their way in. Soothing music was being played. When they neared the door, they found a small group of persons standing before a photograph of some holy person clad in red robes and were offering arati. The photograph was covered all over with vibhuti. In a flash, Aldrich felt that there was some indefinable connection between this red clothed holy person and the voice that had guided him to safety not long ago. Through Indira Devi, he heard about Bhagavan Satya Sai's divine acts of love and compassion. Within a few days thereafter, he traveled to India and reached Swami in Prashanti Nilayam. Was it Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai's voice that he had heard when caught in the terrible storm? He did not feel like asking Baba directly about it, but he saw enough instances to provide him with the right answer to his doubt. When his roommate in Puttaparthi, an Indian, described to Aldrich his own personal experiences, he found that they too sounded exactly like his own. Aldrich's doubts cleared completely and he found equanimity and peace of mind. Call me by any name, all names pertain to me, said Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai. He demonstrated the truth of his claim by reaching the distressed Aldrich, who was caught in a storm in the sky and desperately crying to God. 15,000 miles away and dramatically rescuing him. Indira Devi. Born a Russian, Indira Devi had mastered yoga from India. She discarded her original Russian name, Dr. Mrs. Kennedy, and assumed the Indian name of Indira Devi. She teaches yoga in her ashram in Tikate in Mexico. When she was 60 years old, she happened to meet Howard Murfitt in Madras and heard from him for the first time about Sri Satya Sai Baba. She was not particularly impressed. Once, while in Mumbai, she happened to see the treatise Brigu Samhita, which was in the possession of Chaya Shastri Kantilal Pandya. She looked for and found what was written in that book about herself. She read, because of the punyam accumulated in your earlier lives, you are about to have darshan of some exalted personage. Even at this moment, you are under his protection. The account further clarified exalted personage means God. In 1966, when she was in her 66th year, she had the darshan of Sri Satya Sai for the first time. At the very first sight, she developed strong faith and belief in Swami's divinity. Swami gave her interview and asked what would she desire to have. She did not ask him for worldly wealth or even salvation. She simply prayed, Swami, please light up the spiritual lamp in my heart. Swami materialized and gave her a locket and vibhuti and assured her, whenever you need anything, ask me, irrespective of the physical distance between us. I will hear your prayer. I will always be with you. There occurred once a vast fire in the Mexican mountains that destroyed thousands of houses and many acres of forests. It was feared that the conflagration might consume the Sai institutions in Mexico and the USA. Unable to withstand its fury, many people abandoned homes and possessions and fled for life. Traveling by car, they reached the top of a mountain and took refuge in a house. They spent 4 hours there praying to Sai Baba. The fire raged below them all round the mountain. After it died down at last, they returned fearing the worst. To their relief and surprise, they found that the Sai Nilayam of Indra Devi was unscathed, even though everything around it got completely gutted. The unscathed Nilayam, untouched by fire, stood there in all its beauty and splendor. Even the white carpet in the prayer hall remained as beautiful as ever. They felt that Baba had personally stood guard at the place and safeguarded the Nilayam. At the precise time this daunting fire was raging, Indira Devi was in Chicago giving a discourse about Bhagavan Sri Sai Baba. She saw the ravage and severity of the fire on television. She also read in newspapers that the fire had occurred quite close to her Sai Nilayam. But she was not at all worried. She thought, it belongs to Bhagavan. He will do with it as he wishes. If it is his will that it should burn down, so will it. True to her steadfast faith, the institution remained absolutely safe. A few days later, she received an invitation from Baba to come over and inaugurate the Women's College in Anantapur. She came all the way from Mexico and participated in the celebrations. Before she left for Mexico, Bhagavan materialized for her a locket bearing the image of goddess Lakshmi. While giving it to her, he said, this is for your home. This will protect it. Hereafter, it will never be threatened by hazards of fire. When Indira Devi came to Puttaparthi, she organized yoga classes for the benefit of the school children. Baba was pleased with her services. He materialized a diamond-studded ring for her. She had long ago given up wearing any jewelry, but she would wear this ring, she thought, provided it bore Swami's image. Swami sensed her thought. He took the ring back and gently blew on it. Immediately it changed its form. Now it bore a small stone with Swami's image on it. Swami put it on her finger himself and said, whenever you wish, you can see me in this ring. Only you and nobody else can thus see me. When you look into this ring, you will find me exactly as I happen to be in India at that moment, and you can see what I am doing. Indira Devi was once in California. She looked into the ring and saw Baba sitting in a white car. She recorded a note in her diary. Swami is traveling somewhere. On another occasion, she found Baba talking to devotees seated in front of him in a semicircle. The scene she felt was not of Prashanti Nilayam. She noted that detail too in her diary. Sometime later, when she came to Prashanti Nilayam, she checked up with Sri Kasturi about her two visions. He confirmed that the first one showed Swami while on tour. Indra Devi questioned, but Swami's car was not white. Sri Kasturi clarified that at that time of her vision, Swami had indeed traveled by a white car. The second vision was also explained by Sri Kasturi. It happened in far off Kerala. On 21st November 1970, in the course of the fourth All India Conference of the Office Bearers of Sri Satya Sai Seva Samitis held in Prashanti Nilayam, Indira Devi spoke in the presence of Bhagavan. In her speech, she referred to the above two incidents. Sri Kasturi quipped, "So, you have been spying on Baba," said Sai Baba, as well as the entire audience burst into laughter. Indira Devi rendered invaluable service to spread Swami's message in the USA through films, books, and lectures. During her campaign, she faced an unexpected problem. Those who attended her gatherings began to request for Vibhuti materialized by Swami. On her next visit to India, she mentioned this to Swami. Suddenly, a beautiful silver container with a lid materialized in Swami's hand as if someone handed it over to him from above. Swami showed it to her and said, "This is the container of inexhaustible vibhuti. You may distribute any amount of vibhuti from this, it will never run out." He emptied the entire quantity in it on a piece of paper and gently tapped it. It got filled up again with fresh vibhuti. As he handed over the silver container to Indira Devi, he directed her to use the vibhuti from it for healing the sick. Therefore, whenever sick persons came to her, she used to tell them about Swami's glory and give them some quantity of the holy ashes. This simple treatment restored many to sound health. When Indira Devi came to Puttaparthi for the Shivaratri festivities in 1969, Swami invited her, Walter Cowan, his wife Elsie Cowan, and some others into the interview room. After some discussion on spiritual matters, Swami materialized a beautiful rosary chanting 108 pearls and showed it to them. Everyone was anxious to see to whom Baba would present it. Baba said, "This is no ordinary rosary. It is extremely potent. It can heal every chronic disease. This is very essential for the service which Indira Devi is doing." The precious rosary was presented by Baba to Indira Devi. She was in tears of joy. "Swami, will it heal any and every disease?" she asked. Baba replied, "Except those caused by evil karma, that is, deeds, inherited from earlier lives. It heals every disease. Even I will do nothing for those who suffer from inherited karma." Attendance at the bhajans in Indira Devi's yoga center began to grow. Many of them used to press her to initiate them into some sacred mantra. Unable to cope with such insistence, she once took her problem to Swami. He advised her, "The most potent of all mantras is Om. But as you know, it cannot be given to any and every person. When someone asks for initiation into mantra, look at me in your ring and ask me. Whatever mantra comes to your mind at that moment, give that to the seeker. It shall become the mantra coming from me." With these words, he granted her the spiritual authority and competence to initiate devotees into holy mantra. Indira Devi was blessed thrice over. Firstly, she was blessed to be able to have Swami's darshan any time of her choice. Secondly, she was blessed with the power to heal the sick. And thirdly, and most importantly, she was blessed with the spiritual authority to initiate aspirants into mantra. She could thus control the physical well being as well as spiritual progress of the devotees. And she had also the additional privilege of accessing Bhagwan at will on her spiritual internet, if we may so describe it. It is worthy of note that Swami has not granted even one of these three blessings to any other person.
Sairam. Dr. Frank Bernowski. Dr. Frank Bernowski was a professor in the University of Arizona, USA. He acquired special skills in using the Kirlian camera for photographing the multicolored aura of illumination that envelopes every living being, including humans. The color, contrast, intensity, breadth, and depth and brightness vary from person to person, and also with the bodily health and intellectual and spiritual level of the subject. While it may be about a foot deep for ordinary persons, it could extend to even 2 feet all around in the case of great thinkers, yogis, and spiritually evolved persons. This aura comprises luminosity of innumerable shades of color. When the person is quite healthy and cheerful, it will be white. When he is in a mood of affection, pity, or compassion, it will be bluish. When the mood is of intense love, the color turns rosy. In anger and hatred, it becomes red. Moreover, this illumination is not ordinarily visible to the naked eye. 1 in a million might have the gift of seeing it, but with the Kirlian camera, the aura can be clearly photographed. In fact, even the changing mood of the subject can also be seen in such pictures. Dr. Bernowski used the Kirlian camera for taking photographs of auras of thousands of world leaders, kings, queens, holy persons, and religious heads. He did not come across any person with aura exceeding 2 to 2.5 feet in breadth. Dr. Bernowski had read some books about Baba in America. He heard about his divinity, but he did not form any faith in him. On the Christmas Day of 1977, he happened to visit a home. Members of that family, being Sai devotees, were celebrating Christmas singing Sai bhajans. Not quite relishing it, he removed himself to a room on the upper floor, put out the light, and went to bed. On a table in the room was standing a photograph of Sri Satya Sai with an unlighted candle in front of it. Even as he was looking at it, there was a little crackling sound, and the candle suddenly burst into flame. Nobody had come in. No one lighted the candle. How did it get lighted? He was somewhat puzzled, and he once again looked at the photograph and saw Swami smiling at him. The very next year, that is, in 1978, Dr. Bernowski came to India to participate in a conference being held in Bangalore. He made use of that opportunity to travel all over the land and to photograph with his Kirlian camera hundreds of yogis and holy persons. In no case did the aura exceed 2 feet in breadth. One morning, he saw Swami for the first time in Whitefield early at 5 a.m. When he set eyes on Baba, he was stunned. The effulgence around Swami was beyond his wildest imagination. It extended beyond 40 feet. As devotees went on singing bhajans, it was spreading further and further, enveloping the whole building, and thousands of devotees gathered there. It was so bright that Bernowski looked all around him to check whether it was caused by the numerous mercury vapor lamps around. As Swami moved, the shimmering envelope of luminescence also moved like a living, vibrant sheath. He concluded that it must be integral to Swami and must be emanating from him only. Swami's summer classes were being conducted at that time, so Bernowski could watch Swami continuously for 3 to 4 days. One day, Swami called upon him to address the gathering. Bernowski described his unparalleled experience. I am a scientist and I am basically a Christian, but my faith in that religion is not particularly intense. By means of this Kirlian camera, I investigated 15,000 eminent persons in every walk of life all over the world. But here, I have discovered something I never met with anywhere else. The illumination radiated by Baba is of a spectacular rosy color, which is characteristic of the most intense, the deepest, and the most selfless love. What is also unique is that his aura spreads and submerges not merely this audience hall, but far beyond. As far as I can see, like a flood of light, it is engulfing everything. This rosy luminescence is also displaying silver and gold streaks, intensely bright and perfectly clear. Here is a fantastical spectacle which I have never encountered till now. Swami full embodiment of is the full embodiment of love. Sampurna Prema Murti. When Swami comes near us and touches us, that effulgence is flowing into us also. We are getting immersed in that mighty stream of ethereal glow. Swami is the walking personification of love. As I am speaking here, you will notice that my body is shivering. Don't you see? But this shiver is not because of fear. The suprahuman aura that surrounds him is indescribable. Glory is so moving that my body is shivering uncontrollably. Swami materialized a diamond ring and gave it to Dr. Bernowski. He also gave him the much sought after interview. Swami spoke about his months-old grandson and told him, the day you return to America and reach home, your grandson will be subject to a surgery. Don't worry, the operation will be successful. The baby will be restored to complete health. Swami told all this on his own. Dr. Bernowski made no mention of the baby at all. However, he did not pay much heed to Baba's words about the child. He was aware that doctors had said the operation could be performed years later after the baby grew up. He was therefore surprised to learn on reaching home that the baby had indeed been operated upon that very day. The doctor who performed the operation was an Indian. Dr. Bernowski told him all that he had experienced in Puttaparthi and showed him the diamond ring presented by Swami. As Swami had assured him, the baby soon got well. Dr. Bernowski was surprised at Swami's sarva jnatva, total awareness of past, present, and future. Dr. Bernowski was amply blessed. He was given the unusual opportunity to investigate Swami's divine power with his scientific equipment. And fully convinced by what he found, he proclaimed to the wide world unhesitatingly and with his deepest conviction.
Sairam, Dr. Art Ang Jamsai. It was around 1945. The Second World War had not ended yet. Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai materialized himself in front of a house in Bangkok. He called the lady of the house, gave her some vibhuti, and told her to sprinkle it all over the roof of her house and disappeared. He spoke in her own language. She saw that the powder given to her looked like white sand. She did not, however, disregard his words and sprinkled it all over the roof of her house. Within a few minutes, an air raid took place. All houses in the neighborhood except hers were destroyed with bombs bombarding all over. Art Ong Jamsai Na Ayodhya was a young boy in the family. In due course, Art Ong became a student of science. He obtained a doctorate degree from the Imperial College of Science and Technology. He worked as an advisor to some ministers in his country. He rose high in the professional echelon. In 1971, NASA of the USA advertised for a post of a scientist in connection with its project of sending an unmanned space vehicle to explore Mars. Art Ong applied and got the job. The project was to land a vehicle safely on the surface of the planet, overcoming all odds, and to collect material from the planet's surface for investigation in NASA. Art Ong was given the task of planning and designing the equipment needed. Arrangements were made to build a model of Mars in the laboratory with similar characteristics, a model of the rocket and the surface lander, and to carry out investigations. Funds required for the entire project were to be provided by NASA. In a few months, Art Ong was able to develop the needed equipment that was to be tested in the laboratory. But he had earlier been feared, but as As had early been feared, the landing unit burned off as soon as it entered the Martian atmosphere. After some more months, Art Ong built another, but that too met the same fate. It went on for several times. The whole project seemed doomed. Enormous outlays of money went to waste. Poor Art Ong did not know what to do. He felt terribly depressed. Finally, he could make a successful one. It successfully completed a laboratory test without any hitch. A life-size rocket, which was named Viking, was readied and in due course launched. It was successful, and samples of materials from Martian surface could be obtained. Art Ong realized that more than his own efforts, it was an invisible hand that helped him in his success. Following this, he abandoned the pursuit of science and busied himself with the search of God. Together with his mother, he came to India and arrived in Whitefield. Bhagavan asked Art Ong to work in the Satya Sai organizations and spread spiritual education linked to human values. Soon enough, some dramatic events happened. Art Ong was totally engrossed in Swami's activities. He had no time to look after his own factory in Bangkok. One day, the security guard was sleeping in his room at its entrance. He had bolted the door from inside. But despite that, Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai entered the room, woke him up, and bade him to attend to his duty properly. He spoke in the Thai language. The guard, who understood his instructions well enough, could not imagine how the stranger could enter the room, even though its door had been bolted from inside. Next day, too, the same thing happened. When the head of the factory, Art Ong, arrived, the security guard told him everything that happened, apologized for his lapse, and added that the whole incident was quite baffling and inexplicable. He then noticed the decorated photograph of Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai in Art Ong's room. He told his master that it was the same person who entered the guard room in the night and alerted him. A few days later, Art Ong arrived in Prashanthi Nilayam. Bhagavan was giving a discourse on the need for linking education systems with human values. In the middle of his discourse, he invited Art Ong to the dais to speak. In his talk, Art Ong described his great experiences and how Swami had been kind to him with his loving care and affection. From that day onwards, Dr. Ong Chamsai, the distinguished scientist, had been fulfilling himself through serving the divine mission of Bhagavan, disseminating the nectar-sweet spiritual precepts of Swami in the West with renewed dedication and with strong of faith. In 1998, Dr. Art Ong started the Institute of Satya Sai Education in Bangkok to propagate the ideas of Sri Satya Sai education and human values. The Institute has organized an international conference in September of 2000 on strengthening values education in Prashanthi Nilayam, in which 650 educators from as many as 78 countries of the world participated. Swami blessed several participants not only with valuable diamond rings, but also with several inspiring addresses. Saira. Samasta loka sukhino bhavantu. Samasta loka sukhino bhavantu. Samasta loka sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Sairam, thank you all for joining. We'll see you all tomorrow.